Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today for the OAUG Young Professionals Forum. We have a very exciting and informative call planned for you today with Nareen Soda from Info Semantics. And here with me also is Keaton Tonke, one of our board members and the founding member of the OAUG Young Professionals. So we'll go ahead and jump on in today. We'd like to welcome you all to the call, and I'll just do a few quick reminders. We will have all of the call attendees on mute throughout today's presentation, but if you do have any questions for our presenter or the other call attendees, or if you experience any technical difficulties throughout the call, please type those questions or technical difficulties into the Q&A tab in your control panel, and I'll be happy to help you figure those out while we continue with the call. And we're going to do just a few quick reminders. We do invite all of you to join the OAUG LinkedIn page and make sure that you are networking with us online, networking with your other young and new professionals and potential mentors, connecting with them to ask questions and share tips and tricks, and it's a great place to get updated information. And we want to remind you that we have quite a few things going on for the young professionals out at Oracle Open World this year in October. On Sunday, October 25th, from 12 o'clock noon until 12:45, we will be having a short young professionals meeting in Moscone West in room 3003. And then we would like to invite our young and new professionals to walk over to the food court with us and join us for lunch and networking. And we'd like you to save the date, Tuesday, October 27th, for a get-together and party that OAUG will have that evening. So lots of exciting things coming up at Oracle Open World. All right, and with that, I will go ahead and again introduce Keaton, and he is our board member and the founding member of the Young Professionals Group, and I'm going to turn it over to him to introduce our speaker today.
Thank you. Thanks, Anna. Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce Nareen Soda. Nareen is actually founder of Info Semantics and has over 20 years of experience, mostly around the Oracle Business Suite and also around data analytics and a lot of experience around the intelligence and intelligence solutions, and has done work with multiple companies around the U.S. So with that, a brief introduction, I'm going to turn it over to Nareen to start his presentation. But as the topic suggests, he's going to primarily talk about the analytics and share his experience about what does analytics even mean and how to go forward from there. So over to you, Nareen.
Absolutely. Thank you for the introduction, and Keaton. I sincerely appreciate the opportunity presented to me today to speak to the OAUG Young Professionals Forum. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Nareen Soda, and I've been working in the business intelligence, analytics, data warehousing space since 1997. I started as a reporting programmer way back in, I guess, in fact, 96 sometime, and I've journeyed through, all the analytics in the big data space, and I'm only recently getting more exposure into the big data space. We'll talk about that as well, as that is somewhat relevant to the discussion. One of the things I don't know if you've noticed, but we initially had a title of Oracle Analytics, but I knew the agenda and the abstracts was more focused around general analytics subject to the business intelligence analytics space. So we changed the title to Business Analytics. We will talk about Oracle solutions as well as part of the technology stack that we'll talk about, but I think it's only fair to discuss what other players and how they're playing in the market space as well. So, and if you could turn to the next slide, please. So, from an agenda perspective, we'll talk about what is analytics, is history, evolution. Then meaning evolution like back in the day from today. We'll talk about different types of analytics. I want to discuss there are some real-world use cases that I've provided some bullet points on, but throughout the presentation, I'll try to take a few examples of my own experiences in the industry out there. I've worked quite a bit with within finance, the higher education, as well as the federal government. So we'll talk about some of those. And then as part of the discussion, I want to highlight some of the tools and technology players out there in the marketplace, including Oracle, and there's some smaller ones as well. It's still evolving, and I like to talk through those, and then maybe give you some ideas around some opportunities that are out there, because this is still a lot of the big data and some of the analytics. There's still a lot of gaps out in the marketplace. It could be a good opportunity for some of you. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so I mean, analytics, we talk about it. It's actually a broader subject. I mean, we could really talk at length and on and different things, and there's so much about that. It's all pretty much surrounds around data. But for our discussion purposes, I want to summarize this as the process of collecting data, massaging it, analyzing the same using different methods, algorithms, and tools to check for trends, predictions, forecasting, and so on, and be able to use those methods to be able to identify opportunities and efficiencies and make informed business decisions. Some of this analysis could happen within the organization, or it could happen with external factors as well. We'll talk about them as we go. Next slide, please. So I have a simplistic, overview of the analytics. The centerpiece of any analytics is data collection, right? And I try to put this into a simplified picture, but please ignore the cloud. So I think when people look at cloud, okay, the other questions come back. Oh, is this available on the cloud? And we'll talk about that too. Yes, this is some of the components that are available on the cloud these days. Some of the analytics pieces are being offered by some suppliers for certain specific verticals as a subscription model and so on. But I'm not going to talk more about cloud, but I'm trying to focus more on analytics. So it's, the centerpiece is obviously the data collection process, right? The data collection, the storage of it, the processing of it, and so on. And then comes the methods and the techniques and the tools that are then applied, over the data to analyze, identify trends and weaknesses in the business, forecasting trends and predictions and so on. There are certainly tools and technologies that are out there available today to collect and process and store, and separately to analyze data to the right side. It is, however, important to note that good decision making is only as good as the quality of data. So that's one of going to be the key focuses of any mechanism that we use to collect data and to be able to validate and reconcile and ensure and vet that the data is good that we're looking at to be able to make informed decisions. Okay. Next slide, please. All right. So the data could come from a variety of data sources. I'm seeing more. Pretty much every customer today has an ERP system running, like an Oracle EBS, for example, or a PeopleSoft, or an SAP. But they also have, as of right now, there are a lot of cloud applications. The folks are trying to use best of the breed solutions, right? So the Sales Cloud out there from Oracle, and of course Salesforce is there, and there's HCM Cloud, and separate applications are running outside of the EBS. There's a bigger need to integrate all of them together from a reporting perspective and analyze them. So the data could be collected from any of the sources and integrate them. Social media is also playing an important role in trending and to identify patterns. All of this data could be processed, integrated, and stored in a data warehouse. But in some cases, the latest technology trends, have advanced with web service integrations where, not all data needs to be brought over into a data warehouse. I mean, some of them could continue to live in their original state and be able to, but could be consumed from a reporting and analytics standpoint. And Oracle and IBM and several others do this quite effectively. So it's when you talk about storing data, I don't want people to think that, oh, in order to be able to do some analytics, we got to bring all of them together into one place. It's not necessary. It may evolve, storing a collection of data into one place may evolve over time as well. But today, with the latest availability of technology, some of those could live in their original state and scale up as we go. Okay. All right. Next slide, please. Okay. So what about different methods to analyze data, right? So once you have the database addressed, you now have various methods available and deployed, to perform analytics. Some of the methods include trends, patterns, and some historical statistics and stuff like that, and history. And I'm sure. Let me give an example. I don't know if I'm sure you guys are big shoppers online, and most recently I could tell you Amazon and Google.com actually use the data mining, and they're very efficient in applying statistical methods for pattern and trend studies. For example, I was on Amazon.com recently, and I was trying to buy some grill mats, right? And I never finished it. I did some lookups and searched a few things, and I signed off when left. And my wife bought a few other things, but a few weeks later, when I logged back in, and with my profile, it brought me back my past search criteria and my shopping trends. So it's a mix of different things. So they are really mining things really well, and obviously they're using some statistical methods built into their own analytic solutions and tools to be able to study those and gain some, provide for a better customer experience as such. There are obviously there are other external factors that are that influence some of the things that we do. The holiday season and so on and so forth. So the methods incorporate some of those into when analyzing the data as well. The other important concept is the time series analysis, and I'm sure you've probably heard about this and seen pretty much every day, mostly in finance and of course in sales as well, is to compare, year-over-year comparison, right? Part of this, how did we do this quarter, this year versus how we've done, last year, the same quarter, and so on, to be able to, as they make decisions, as they put things into place, I think it's important to study how those variables have influence on how how a business continues to grow or become more efficient. Okay. Next slide, please. Let's talk a little bit about the evolution of analytics, right? Okay. I mean, it all started with traditional reporting. For example, I recall working for the communications industry back in '96, and the technology was there. But it required a lot more due diligence. This particular example I was going to talk about is, for example, I would get a request from my manager to retrieve, provide him a list of customers that are in the state of Arizona, and how long have they been with the service provider, and provide them, they have, three-way calling service, or I don't know if you remember back then, three-way calling, you had to pay for some of those. These days, I'm sure a lot of those are available and pretty common. So three-way calling services and so on. And then what I would do is I used to write, select statements, because some of this information, all this actually pretty much is stored in the database, right? So I would write SQL statements, or some cases in PL SQL, and then I would retrieve the information and provide the output back to my manager, and who then used to take that and put it in Fox Pro. I don't know if some of you recall Fox Pro, but he used to use Fox Pro to massage it, to pivot it, and provide the kind of dashboards that the executive management or whoever the end customer that's asking for the information. So the whole process, the whole process in general, it's by the time the request has come to him and to me, and by the time I provide the results back, it was a week or two would pass by, and so it's just sometimes it's just too late. And over time, we started making use of some of the tools that are available at the time. We began modeling and profiling of databases and so on and so forth. We thought the technology was amazing. It was, but you really needed to have a combination of tools, or even sometimes, not in my case, but in specific cases with large industries, you needed statistical analysts to actually slice and dice the data to make any sense of it all. And the viable solutions at the time were few and far, and mostly small and mid-sized enterprises were pretty much out of luck. But needless to say, the business analysts obviously have come a long way. Today, enterprises of all sizes can now apply analytics and data modeling tools on top of big data technology to extract meaningful trends and insights, and can deliver quick, valuable business intelligence, agile visualizations, and predictive analytics on any device or any platform at any time. And if you notice now, the number crunching and reporting that used to take hours now get accomplished in 30 seconds or at a fraction of the cost. Analytics has certainly gone prime time. Today, business analytics is a commonplace. Adopted broadly across industries, organizations with different sizes and geographic regions. And I've been looking at one of the articles on the IDC program. It talks about there's enough evidence that data-driven decision making enabled by business analytics solutions provides comprehensive differentiation for businesses. But anyway, the key driver for the projected growth or for the analytics solution now is more affordable to companies of all sizes and available through the cloud as well, dramatically reducing the time to get up and running. So this obviously translates to a lot more opportunities for all of us in this room. And there's also the impact of social media, right? So if you look at it, even the smallest of the businesses today rely on Twitter, Facebook, on advertising, on LinkedIn and Google to find new customers and enhance their brands and so on. That has a significant influence on reading out, understanding the trends and the patterns out there. So the analytics basically is providing a much more complete look at the business today, and I think that the analytics are also available on like user-friendly dashboards, mobile applications, and so on and so forth as well. I believe there is a tremendous opportunity. There are a lot of gaps as well that we'll talk about in a few, and I think for specific verticals that some of us could take advantage of and look into. The analytics today, right, obviously touches many systems and solutions within infrastructure, and it certainly opens up a lot more opportunities for all of us. Okay, let's walk the next slide, please. All right, let's talk about the different types of analytics. I picked a handful of them. It's quite a broader subject, but I wanted to touch upon a few to talk with. Sorry. There's something called streaming analytics, right? And this basically includes analysis of streaming data to produce some actionable insights. So all incoming data can be correlated with historical data processed based on the certain rules and patterns to trigger certain actions. For example, if a customer is walking around a shopping mall, and let's just say an app is deployed on the mobile phone, it can analyze and identify the location and possibly identify what the customer's preferred favorite eating out places would be, and you can maybe bring up a coupon, a promotion of 20% off at a nearby restaurant that he or she may like to go. So that's more on the streaming analytics side. For example, if you look at predictive analytics, this type utilizes the current and historical data, to build models using statistics and other mining techniques to make predictions. For example, credit card companies today use the data to predict, and detect fraud. They've got models that are process the incoming transactions against historical data to determine the risk score, and then and then identify or flag if some transaction is a fraud or suspected, right? So I mean, for instance, I mean the predictive analytics here could be combined with streaming as well. For example, I mean, most of us, I'm sure some of us, travel quite a bit, and I travel a lot, and I travel overseas as well. And it's interesting, right? There was one time I did a trip to Asia, and then I've come back to the States. A month later, I was here in the U.S. and there was a transaction that was happening in India, and in fact, India was not part of my trip. So that time I was there, and you can't have two transactions. You can't have transactions happening in completely two geographical locations when I'm here in one place, right? So that's a flag. So I think these are predominantly used. This type of analytics are predominantly already used in very efficiently out in the market. There's customer analytics too, right? This is again, this is something to help us understand how our product is being used across the customer's business perspective. Then business analytics. Business analytics is important. I mean, I guess it's a little broader in a way where most companies aggregate the data from multiple sources. So like we talked an earlier example where the data could be coming from your CRM application, finance could be coming from your EBS environment, and you often would have a need to bring them together and be able to see how your recent sales and the revenue has impacted the financials, for example, right? So those are all typical things that the integration into warehouse and so on falls under business analytics. There's a few others as well. There's something called the log file analytics, right? Log file analytics is nothing but every company, every application creates a whole bunch of log files to analyze, and a lot of the log files are semi-structured or unstructured, not quite in a relational database as such. So you need some search patterns to go through the log files to identify any shortcomings, any bottlenecks, or any inefficiencies or whatever. There are certain solutions out there in the marketplace. I'm going to have this on the slide as well later on as we go through, but Splunk.com, I like for you guys to check it out. Splunk is a company that has pioneered some good operational intelligence, reading out of the log files that all these applications generate today. It's something for us to read through. Excuse me. There's something called in-memory analytics. Again, this goes more on the technical side, not as much on the function side. But in-memory analytics is nothing but it's a trend to process more data. Okay, there's lots of volume of data out there coming, being maintained in different sources. There's a significant need to process larger amounts of data. Oracle has solutions today, with Exadata, the engineered systems, Exalytics, and the in-memory analytics systems, along with a few others as well, to process large amounts of data. But these are certain flavors, I would say, of the types of analytics that are out there. I'm sure there are a few others too. I've got some references later on that you guys could check out. Okay. So let's go to the next slide, please. All right. So that brings up big data. So what is the big data analytics, right? We keep hearing a lot about. So traditional data warehouses, right? I mean, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the relational databases, the rows and the columns and the table structures and so on and so forth. People that have been with the Oracle world, we all know what they mean, or the Microsoft world. But the big data is more to analyze the large sets of structured and semi-structured, unstructured data patterns. For example, I mean, what I mean by unstructured is being able to process Adobe PDF files, for example, and then have analytics to search through those PDF files combined with your structured data and so on. So that's where the big data is coming from. Big data is a combination of your structured data from different sources. Not just big data just doesn't mean large data. It just doesn't mean large volumes of data. It means that it's bringing together, your structured data, your unstructured data, your social media data, your Twitter's information, and all of them together to be able to help perform some predictive analytics and read patterns and so on and so forth. So there are some technologies that are significantly gaining in prominence. I think it's important for all of us to get on the start to understand those more. Hadoop clusters and some of the related technologies are being used today to collect, process diverse, large sets of data, and then the same data could then be analyzed using batch query tools. There's some other software called stream processing that do stream processing. There's SQL and Hadoop, where there's also NoSQL as well, where you can use some of those tools. Some of them are open source. For example, in the Hadoop space, and there are several others in the NoSQL space. They form the basis for open source platforms to query and search, your Hadoop databases. There are some mainstream BI software and data visualization tools also available that play a key role in the analysis process. The one thing I may add here that may benefit. I mean, I'm thinking through it myself, and obviously there's only so much time and money. But today, Hadoop and Cloudera and some of these are extensively being used to process and collect large amounts of data coming in from all these different sources. But there's a big lack of good visualization tools that sit on top of the Hadoop database to perform trend analysis and so on and so forth. I think the collection of data from unstructured and all has matured, but the processing tools and the analyzation tools on the top are still a little immature. So people are having to use a combination of tools out there in the marketplace. That could be an opportunity, if anyone wants to think through and become creative and innovative. Okay. Next slide, please. So let's talk about tools and technologies, right? Oracle obviously, has made some big investments. I don't know, I don't have it in here, but I'm not sure how many of you have heard about this solution called Oracle Endeca. Endeca helps querying, unstructured data, on Hadoop databases as well. So you can search through the text search, pattern searches, and all. It does quite effectively. And Oracle has announced a recent a solution as well with advanced analytics. And advanced analytics, could sit on top of the Hadoop database as well. I'm yet to look at some of the tools myself, but I know there's a lot of prominence that is getting into with some of the solutions. In addition to that, we talked earlier about the in-memory solutions out there. There are engineered systems from Oracle to process large amounts of data, which include Exadata, the Exalytics platforms, and so on. SAP, HANA, and IBM have their own solutions as well, for big data processing and analytics. Teradata obviously has been one of the players. Splunk is something that I wouldn't say I was, but they're one of the pioneers of processing through the log files, reading through the Twitters and so on. So I think it's a privately held company, but something definitely for us to look through. Some of the other technologies I briefly mentioned earlier are Hadoop, Yarn, MapReduce, Spark, Hive. All these actually form the core for open source software framework to process large data sets. So these are available out there in the market for us to understand and see how best we can learn through and leverage them. Okay. Next slide. All right. So some of the real-world use cases. There's in the references section. I've shared a link to a couple of references, but IBM has got some pretty good use cases that you could look at. I mean, they're all across the industry. Oracle is also has solutions that are primarily for verticals, and some of the use cases could be like the content filtering and analytics, right? I mean, it happens in a lot of countries, and so on. We talked a little bit about the credit card fraud prevention analytics and location analytics. Predictive analytics, is used significantly by law enforcement. I've got an example for that. I wasn't completely involved in this, but we this was for the Drug Enforcement Administration, the Department of Justice, right? So what the project basically was to track the different types of narcotics in use in different states. Identify the top five large usage rates in some of the states, and drill through and be able to identify the demographics of it could be the age group, it could be the race, to identify where the most usage is, and then try to dig through, provide that information to law enforcement officers, so they could take that and perform another further study to prevent that, to reduce that, and identify causes and so on and so forth. It's a very big project, but what we got involved was fairly small in bringing together the information and being able to get that out to the law enforcement officers. That's one of the, there's some pretty interesting use cases out there in the market, and each of these firms, right, including Oracle, are coming up with specific solutions to address these verticals in telecom, finance, manufacturing. Primarily in manufacturing, it's more to do with quality of the product, the shop floor efficiencies and so on. There are obviously customer experience and trends that we see every day. We talked a little bit about log file analytics too, but there are several other use cases, and I urge you to go through some of the references that I have. I believe it's the next slide. Could you, yeah, please. I would urge you guys to check out this site, the very first one. There are a whole bunch of use cases out there. Oracle has got lots of information too. The way I see it is right now it's sort of scattered around. You got to look through some of that, but you could search for oracle.com and big data. You'll find a lot of information. And of course, there's another forum called techtarget.com. It'll provide you with a lot of information on what's going around in the big data space. One of the important things I'm seeing lately, primarily for some specific verticals, for maybe mid-sized firms, is cloud-based subscription-based offerings, right? For folks to rather than deploying the whole infrastructure and so on, they could subscribe to some of the services for their specific needs, and that's getting a big out in the market today. So I think techtarget.com should provide a lot more information for us to read through as well. I think that pretty much covers what I wanted to do. I want to provide you a high-level brief overview on what analytics is, provide you some sources so you can take back and read through. I'm really now open for questions.
All right, thank you so much. That was awesome, and I hope that all of the attendees feel that we accomplished our goal, which was to make sure that next time you are on the elevator with a colleague who's talking about analytics, you feel very confident and comfortable jumping in that conversation and holding your own. So I know I certainly feel more comfortable and confident now that we've had this. So thank you so much, Noreen. If you guys have any questions, attendees, if you would go ahead and type those in the Q&A tab in your control panel, this is the perfect time to go ahead and do that now. And in the meantime, Keaton, do you have any comments or anything you'd like to add while we are giving people a moment to type their questions?
Sure. Thanks, Anna. Once again, Naren, thank you very much. It was a very informative session, and certainly I also learned quite a bit from this presentation. So while the younger professionals are in the process of thinking through the questions that they may want to ask, I have something that I'd like to ask to preempt some of the questions that may come through, which is, if a young professional on this call or anyone who's interested in analytics wants to get involved with either the technology side or the actual analysis side, how do they go about in a corporate world these days? What is the starting point? And the second part of the question is, where does that career lead them to?
It's a broader question, Ketan. I think it's a great question. It's quite broad. I think the bigger involvement actually comes from from a business side. I mean, basically, you're trying to solve a business problem. I think that's where it all starts.
Right.
You're trying to solve a business problem. That's where it all starts, and then the key is to understand the business problem and understand the gaps. And big data and some of these we talked about, they may not be a solution for all, but tools and technology, seriously, that comes later. I think the important piece is to understand the business problem and think through about how best we can solve them. And I think from a tools and technology standpoint, one of the things that the professionals need to know is there are a lot of influencing factors. There's no one solution. I cannot just sit here and say, because I'm present in an Oracle group, I just cannot say Oracle is the best solution. It all depends on wherever you are. Some of the assets or the investments that have already been made, that could be some influencing factors. If someone is a big Oracle EBS shop, for example, then by all means, to me, looking at an Oracle Analytics solution is probably the best way to go. But yeah, I think it's all about mobilizing the business team. I think that those would be that would form the key basis on continuing to talk about how best we can improvise reporting. What are our different challenges? And then I think that will drive subsequent discussions.
Right. And so what does the future hold for somebody who wants to get into analytics and say they get involved with either a technology or from a business point of view and get involved with analyzing big amounts of data? Where do they end up in their career path? What does the future hold for that?
It is. I mean, it's a good question. Here is what I would urge folks to do is just start to read and learn a little bit more about what analytics is and what big data is. And techtarget.com, Oracle and IBM's are good places to start. And then, depending on your own background, I mean, if you've been already doing some work in the Oracle side of things, then maybe getting some exposure to the Oracle solutions may be a good start from a technology standpoint. Some of us are really inquisitive, and we may want to look at some of the open source platforms that we talked about earlier, and look to start looking at those as well. I mean, those are some things that you could deploy on your own. There are those are available out there for training and so on too. But if some of you have been more focused in an IBM shop, for example, then you may want to look at those tools as well. It all depends on where you are and where you want to go. But each of these players are all having a significant role to play. All these large companies are having a significant play in where the analytics is taking us. Splunk is another form that's an interesting form. They've been handling for quite some years. I mean, Oracle and IBM, for example, and they've gotten more into the acquired mode. So some of the things that we're looking at today are acquired solutions. But there are some companies like the Splunk I just mentioned where there's I mean, it's actually interesting to learn how they do some things. But from a technology standpoint, I think it all depends on where you are, where you want to go, and any of these solutions could be a great platform for you all.
Okay. I also had another question. So Anna, if you could go back a couple slides to the analytics types slide, and there was a section there which talks about the different types there. So I'm assuming some of the companies that embark on a business analysis kind of a project or an initiative, they could go through different phases of the project and different evolutions And depending on the different phases, they may start or not start some of these types of analytics. So streaming analytics, predictive, or customer or business. Obviously, it's all going to be driven by the business needs, but do they have, do most companies generally follow by starting with, say, business analytics and then focusing on some other type of analytics, or is it all over the place?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, all of these may not. I mean, these may be for some specific industries. In some cases, I mean, it could be a combination of these. Could more apply. I mean, streaming analytics is not necessarily for it may not apply for manufacturing, as an example, right? So what I've seen in industry is everyone starts to go. They want to go slow, so they want to get on a good platform, right? And they want to lay a good foundation. Business analytics is where I see they start. A lot of the companies. I mean, here's what's happening in the market, and I'm sure Ketan. I mean, you've seen that too, especially in the Oracle world. I do a lot of the work in the Oracle EBS world, for example, and there are a lot of external systems that interface into Oracle. There's never and some of them are maybe sitting in Oracle, some of them are completely non-Oracle systems on different locations out there. And in fact, I'm just coming out of a recent assessment where there's one plant in Oracle, the rest of them are not. And what do they today? How do they analyze data? They request other units. They send over flat files or Excel spreadsheets once a week, once a month, and then the main group sits there, consolidates them together and perform analysis. There's no clear visibility into those. So the first step is bringing them together, right? So it's not necessarily analytics. The first step is do we in an Oracle world or an SAP world, for example, do we take advantage of a release valve or something to globalize? Maybe bring all these units into one single instance, unit, and then get reporting off of it, or do we want to keep them separate, but either integrate them or bring them together for a unified representation of data? And maybe that's where the analytics would come in, where it can help integrate all of them, get some reporting out, get the visualizations out to get more visibility into the regional reporting and so on. That's the first step. And then now you're stepping up. Now you're stepping up into performing some more analytics. You have all of this data collected historically now. Now you can perform your predictive analytics. Now you can forecast what's coming, what you could do, and so on and so forth. So it's a phased approach. It's never going to be a big bang approach, unfortunately.
Right. Okay, perfect. Well, thanks very much for clarifying those. I don't have any more questions, Anna. Do you have any others from the other attendees?
We do. We have a few. So this first question came in, and Michael asked, can you talk more about what the difference is between structured and unstructured data? You mentioned it in reference to big data.
Absolutely. Good question. Well, structured data is the traditional relational databases, right? A table. You have columns and rows and so on, and all the SQL, the structured query language. SQL is basically the structured query language, right? You use them to select data, join the table, join the columns together, and so on and so forth. Well, in unstructured data, they're not arranged that way. It could be a complete flat file. It could be a huge log file. It could be the social media tweets. It could be a bunch of Adobe PDF files. Now, how do you bring them together? How do you search through this text? That's unstructured data. So there are several scenarios now where the social media tweets, as an example, need to be combined with the structured information together, and that's where the traditional systems, relational databases, the Oracle database, for example, or a Teradata database, or some of these, they can't do it today. That's where Hadoop and those kind of things have come into picture to collect and store and integrate all of that information in one place. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, thank you. And Michael, let us know if you do have any more questions on that. And he says, yes, thanks. So thank you, Michael. Great question. We have another question from Brittany, and she asked, how difficult is it for a professional who is not trained in IT to get a cursory understanding of business, of BI/big data?
Yeah. Business intelligence, big data.
Yes.
Yeah. Brittany, it's a good question. There are two facets to this, right? Business intelligence, big data doesn't mean it's just technical, right? There's, at the end of the day, the business is a consumer of this. So, it's not necessary that you need to be an IT person. Guys, can you hold one just a minute, please? Just a minute, okay? 1 second. So sorry, I'm actually working from home, and I got a few people doing some work, and I thought maybe they needed some they needed me, but sorry, I'm back. Yeah, so there's a business side to it and the IT side of it, right? You could play a big role in the business side as well. You don't necessarily have to be IT trained, and unless you really want to get into the technology side of it, then of course, there's a baseline to begin with and so on. But at the end of the day, business is a consumer. All of the analytics, and you could become a person that understands the data, interprets, and add value to the business. IT provides you the means, bringing all those things together and providing you a mechanism and a method to query the data and so on. But at the end of the day, I mean, the data is still owned by the business. Yeah. I don't know if I was able to answer the question. But if you really want to look into the technology side of it, by all means, lots of sources are available as a start.
No, that's perfect. And Brittany says, thank you very much. So that's great. And great questions, Michael and Brittany. Thank you for sharing it. And Kate, and thank you for that. And anybody else, if you have a question, go ahead and type those in now. And don't miss your chance to ask our expert right now while we have Noreen on the phone and sharing his knowledge with us.
Sure, yeah. And Brittany, let me actually share this example with you. It's very interesting. I don't want to name, I cannot name the customer. It's a higher education institute, okay? So they use another system for financials. There's another system called advancement. I mean, so, what they do is basically the school runs off of the grants and public gifts, pledges, businesses that pledge and so on and so forth. So what they have done is in the last couple of decades, the school decided to get a little more diversified. So they started accepting. They opened up campuses in all the other countries as well, and they began accepting a lot more of the international population than the folks within the U.S. It's a very ranked school, okay? This is being recorded, right? And so I want to be very careful. So here's what happened. Now we were bought in. Okay, good. We put things together, and so there's a process that they go through from a social media where they solicit, this gift giving, donors and so on and so forth. And we put together a system where, it basically brings together what's coming in, what's been the trend, regional trend, non-regional, national trend, the funds that are coming in, and how it's been impacting the overall finance of the school and so on and so forth. Well, what they've found out recently is there's been a significant drop in funding, and the reason being is what they've learned is that there's they've raised the admissions of international folks into the school, but their contribution over the years from a funding perspective has been relatively significantly down. So what the school's doing is now they're trying to do a lot more, they're trying to come up with a way to do a lot more local recruiting, to continue to keep the diversification process, I guess, they've embarked on, but trying to gain some of the funding back, essentially. So now I can obviously, we provide the technology to do all that, but it's the business that have gotten involved. I've done the study, I've used the data to decide on how best, what they need to do from a strategy perspective for the school, and that's best for it. I don't know if it helps, but yeah, that was one good example I could give.
Perfect. No, thank you. That's perfect. I think real-world examples are the most helpful, and Brittany says that's great. So thank you for that. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you, Noreen, for sharing all of this information and knowledge with us. And everyone, we just want to, again, thank you for joining us today. Hopefully you learned a lot, just like I did, and you'll join me in thanking Kaiten for getting the Young Professionals Forum going, and a special thanks to Noreen for sharing with us today. And everyone, thank you for jumping on our call too. If you do have any questions that you think of later after you hang up, you can always email me at agrowth@oaug.org, and I'll be happy to pass those questions along and get some answers for you. And if you will go ahead and mark your calendars, our next OAUG Young Professionals call is going to come up in 2 months on October 21st, again at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, and we will have Doug and Kaberi talking with us, and that will be a great call as well. So lots of exciting things coming up in the Young Professionals world. And again, thank you so much, Noreen, for joining us today and sharing your knowledge, and thank you, attendees, for jumping on a call. And I wish you all a wonderful afternoon. And Kaiten and Noreen, are there any other closing comments you'd like to share with us before we dismiss?
No, once again, thanks, Noreen, and thanks for coordinating the call.
Absolutely. Thank you both, and for giving me this opportunity. Have a great rest of the afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you all, and have a great day.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Bye, everyone.